rehearsed that earlier. Okay, this is my book. This is my new book. It's called Long Lost Blues: Popular Blues in American Culture, 1850 to 1920. And this afternoon's a really important occasion for me because we're doing quite a number of events like this around the book, not just in this part of the country, also in the south as well. And this is the first of them. So, and I was explaining to a friend that usually when I give a performance or a talk, mostly I have kind of like a standard repertoire, and I do 2 or 3 new items because I like doing new items. This afternoon, almost everything I will be playing and singing for you, plus the talk itself is entirely new. So I had a very strong cup of coffee before this afternoon. So this is the book, Long Lost Blues. It's a kind of a bizarre feeling that I want to share with you about writing a book, being an author, which I now am. This book started life. I'll tell you how this book started life. It was must have been in about 1996. I was getting increasingly interested in early American vernacular music. When I say early, I'm talking about early 20th century vernacular music. And I was, as you can tell by my peculiar accent, I'm actually not originally from Clinton. It's via London. And I was with a friend of mine who was a sheet music collector in England. And they pulled out this, there was this early sheet music they had, including some blues sheet music. And I remember looking at this thing and thinking, like, you know, it's really weird that the date on this blues was 1918. And blues is really supposed to have started in 1920. And so I thought, what is the significance of the sheet music? What does it all mean? And then I came over to America and I did a PhD at Sydney University. And my topic was this. This is really based on my PhD, although I've turned it into a more readable, I hope, and less academic, I hope, form for that. And I started getting very, very, very involved in early blues. And I made a lot of trips down to the Library of Congress. Now, what happened was in those days, and now, when a piece of sheet music was published, copies were sent to the Library of Congress so it could be registered for copyright. And those copies were kept, so in case there was a copyright dispute. But what that means is that down in the Library of Congress in Washington, there is a vast treasury of really just about all the blues that were published in this period. It took me a long time to work out how to access it because there isn't just a button that you can press that says blues and it will show up. It was much, much, much more complicated than that. And the main trick that I discovered was befriending the librarians and taking them out to lunch. It seemed to work pretty well.
Strategy that works here in Clinton too, I think.
Probably everywhere, I should think. And I discovered eventually that in this early period that I was dealing with, there were over 450 published blues. Now I need to explain something to you about blues history if you don't know this. That, as I said, blues is thought to have begun with, and here I go for my little show and tell bag. I have a deliberately inelegant show and tell bag. With this recording. This is Crazy Blues, recorded, I don't know how good your eyesight is, but you can see the OK label there. Recorded for the OK label in August 1920. And it marks a revolution in music, there's no question about it. Mamie Smith was a black vaudevillian singer. And she was the first female blues artist to record blues. And this blues recording is a very important recording because the reason why they hadn't recorded that before was they said that African Americans didn't have the money or the interest to buy records that were specifically targeted to them. And what happened was this record was released in September 1920, and it quickly sold 75,000 copies. And they suddenly realized they had a huge hit on their hands, which is the last thing that they expected. And because of that, this record is seen as being the birth of what is called the race record industry, which was recordings that were sold and marketed specifically to African Americans. And because of that, we have a whole legacy of American styles like gospel, blues and jazz. That's a unique legacy, and in a way it really all came out of this record. But here's the problem. If you read histories of blues, they sort of imply that the beginning of blues trace, the first trace of blues is with this record. But here I discovered that before this record was produced effectively, actually this record was made in August 1920, I went to the end, I cut off at the end of 1920, so there was a little bit of overlap. But effectively, we have over 450 blues published before this record was made. And many of them were recorded. And we have, I chronicled all the recordings that I was able to find. On record, we had 400. And on piano roll, we had about at least another 400, although that's a much harder area to be precise about. Let me just show you those media now.